This is Envision Self-Healing Podcast, episode number 56. Hi, I'm Will Fuller.
And I'm Richard Miller.
And we are the co-creators of EnvisionSelfHealing.com and are dedicated in helping you improve your eyesight and quality of life
by taking healing into your own hands.
Now, if you haven't had a chance to already, then head over to our website at EnvisionSelfHealing.com and you'll see a free ebook there that will give you some of the essential eye exercises and ideas on how you can start improving your eyesight today.
The topic of the week this week is an overview of a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. And in the question of the week, we have a viewer on YouTube who says that when he looks at a letter, he can see more clearly, see the words more clearly, whereas if he looks at the whole word, it's blurry.
So Richard, how's the world of self-healing been treating you this week?
Well, I've taken off on a little adventure. This goes back to wanting to learn to drive, which kind of got put on hold when I bought a house almost a year ago. I started looking for a house, and they're just finishing all the landscaping this coming week. So it has almost been a year of essentially, I'm working on my eyes, but putting off that goal because I had to create a house. So anyway, I'm back on my track to learn to drive.
Okay.
And this is something that our mentor, Mayor Schneider, recommended to me several years ago as a way of getting used to driving, which was to get a bicycle, and in particular, he thought I should get an electric bicycle, to get out on the road on a bicycle and just experience get the experience of driving in traffic and things like that as if you were a car, but on a bicycle. So I just started researching bicycles for the city. So
okay, I was going to say, not pretending to make car noises at the same time. Or...
Yeah, just get out there and do beep beep, and then turn the wheel.
So that's a great idea. I never thought about that because Mir Schneider, or mentor and friend, he used to be blind and now he drives a car.
Right, not very well, but yeah.
And he sort of obviously taught himself to be able to drive that way, and a lot of it was through riding his bike and I guess getting that motion of the movement from the side.
Well, a lot of it I think is learning to, you come to an intersection, you look this way, you look at the signal, you look at the stop sign, and you're only traveling, at most 15 to 20 miles an hour, hopefully not through the intersection at that pace on a bike. So you learn the mechanics of looking around and lane changing and things like that. So that's what yesterday I went and looked at, San Francisco's full of bike stores and really innovative and creative bike stores. I found one with a city bike that's very lightweight, and you get to pick its color and the rim, the tire color. It's very, very designery kind of bike and very lightweight. But it's only a 1-speed, and I live on a steep hill, as you know. So I'm probably not going that direction. So I'm leaning towards this electric bike.
Okay.
That has some power, so I'll sort of be in between. And then I think I'm going to take some safety lessons, as if I was sort of taking driving lessons, but with the bike.
Oh, that's a good idea. I think I had to do a license proficiency or something when I was a kid. So I don't know whether you have to do that.
You don't.
Okay.
No. But this guy, I just happened to be at the electric bike store late yesterday evening, right as they were closing, and there happened to be this 2-hour bike safety lecture by one of the top people in California who designs bike lanes and all of these things.
Oh, okay.
So it was very fortuitous, and I'll probably get a lesson from him. He actually apparently teaches a lot of foreign immigrants who've come from other countries, and they've never driven a car, they've never driven a bicycle, and they're learning all of these skills. So he teaches classes for adults doing that. So I'll probably really try and do it right, and so in some ways just apply that knowledge to cars later on. That's
a good plan. Yeah, that was kind of one of we talked a lot about goals at the beginning of this year, and that's kind of been one of your
long-term,
not necessarily this year goal, but a long-term goal. I like it.
Yeah. So that's it's creating motivation now for me to really spend more time on my eyes. So.
Smart.
Yeah. And how was your week?
Good. I finished my last night. I celebrated my 30-day challenge.
Yeah.
I did 30 sessions of yoga in 30 days, Bikram hot yoga. So I celebrated last night, and then I realised that I'd counted the days wrong.
Oh no!
So I had to get up last night. Oh. I had to do a double. I had to do a bunch of double sessions this week. So on the beginning of the week, I did 2 double sessions, an hour and a half each. So that was 3 hours of hot Bikram yoga.
Yeah.
And then I had to get up the next morning at like 6 o'clock in the morning to make the next yoga session.
But in time, right?
Yeah.
In the deadline, yeah.
Because obviously trying to fit in a full day's schedule. And then, so last night I did a double again, and my plan was to finish on this double in all its glory. And I started the second one, and I started thinking about dates and and I was like, no, maybe I got this wrong. So I had to count back, and so.
Well, the computer has it all recorded too. So if you got it wrong, you would have been one short.
Exactly. So I wouldn't have done it. So I realised. So then I had to get up at 6 o'clock this morning.
Oh, nice.
When I get up at 6, I had to do the session at 6 o'clock this morning. So it's okay because I'm already getting up and doing night exercise at 5:30 in the morning.
Right.
So my final moment was this morning, and I think I was pretty exhausted.
Yeah.
But I got a nice little round of applause from the people
in
the room,
nice.
Finishing my 30 days of yoga. So I'm looking forward to getting my life back.
Yes,
a little bit. And it wasn't so much the yoga after the last couple of weeks and podcasts here. Those listening will know that I've been talking about how being kind of a detective as far as doing the yoga is concerned, and finding out any particular positions that might be causing any aches and pains, so that I made sure that I either avoided or eased up in those kind of positions. And so the body stuff was fine. It wasn't really an issue. Yoga is not really tiring. It's not like I think Ashtanga yoga is more press ups and headstands and
more aerobic-y
and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that was fine. It was more the scheduling. Trying to fit it in and
probably got more exercise walking to the yoga studio.
It was a good 25-minute walk, so it was pretty exhausting. So I'm looking forward to having a couple of days off. I thought it was interesting because when you reach these targets or you achieve something like this, and it's like, okay, where have I got in those 30 days? And I realised today that I still can probably only do about 75% of the positions still anyway. There's only 26. So it really kind of clued in after last week. The question of the week was talking about how I've been doing eye exercises for a month, and I've not improved my eyesight. And it kind of made me realise that even with something as basic like with the muscles, I still struggle to touch my toes after 30 days. That's like over 40 hours worth of yoga I've been doing.
And that's about as good a stretching kind of program as you can do. I suppose there are maybe some better ones.
But I've improved, But it kind of highlighted to me that attitude of, I've done X amount of exercise, where's my benefits?
Feet? Right.
Why aren't I a yogic master by now? After doing 30 days straight of yoga.
And you kind of like, well, God, if I went once a week, it would be almost a year's worth of yoga or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Sounds even worse. Yeah.
And really the larger muscle groups behave so much better than the eye.
Yeah.
They're so much more simpler. They just contract and relax. That's kind of their job. They're easier to stretch and strengthen. Whereas the eye is so much more of a complex piece of instrument. So, it kind of certainly highlighted a little bit more to me and hopefully for our listeners that, when working with the eyes, it really does take time. And even like with myself, with yoga, I still can't do that stupid tree pose. I'm still a shrub.
Yeah.
So, but you could imagine after 30 days, I should have that expectation. I've been doing this for 30 days. I've been stretching, strengthening. Why can't I do this pose? And it's similar to eye exercises. It just takes time. I just need to. It's not that I'm never going to get there. Not that I'm never going to be able to do that pose, or 25 of the other poses that I'm still struggling to do.
Yeah.
So, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think probably one of the biggest things I noticed with the yoga actually is improvement in my eyesight. And indeed, what I've been talking about here the last few weeks of seeing the ceiling and now the side posts. And yesterday I kind of got a concept of a few more people in the mirror in front of me, and the room had a bit more width to it. So yeah, that's been really interesting to watch, and I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about that next week as we get a bit more involved. Okay, great. Well, I think that's a good time to move on to topic of the week.
And the topic of the week this week is a review of the book, The Brain That Changes Itself.
And the author of this book is Norman Doig, and I was actually introduced to this book by my father, who heard about it in the UK and listened to it and said that it would be something I'd be interested in, and then I listened to it and passed it on to Richard, and it's really high up there on our book recommendation list. And you might ask, well, you know, vision improvement, surely you should be talking about vision improvement books. But it's really, it's a fascinating book about that kind of paradigm shift in the idea that the brain is just this solid matter that's unchangeable. Once we've learned something, that's it, it's stored in the brain, and you can't do one way or the other. Or indeed, that it's just this static motion, or this inability to be able to change.
Well, I mean, what we were all raised with, you get the brain, you're born, well, I guess it grows through childhood, and then it's basically set.
Yeah.
And it's the same way they treat the eye, really. It grows, it's like, well, okay, there's some flexibility when you're growing, and then it's set, and that's it. You can't change it.
So the book really talks about scientists that have been doing some great discoveries over the last X amount of years on how the brain can actually change, hence the title, The Brain That Changes Itself. And obviously that you can learn new habits. And he also talks in that book quite a bit about vision. He talks about being able to relearn, and how even some societies see better than other societies, and how
that makes sense. Yeah,
you know, if it's a bit more inclined towards their job to do that, then they're going to see clearer for it. And there's also, he talks about stroke patients and many other examples in there about how they're finding people being able to access new parts of the brain, strengthen them in order to be able to learn new skills, and indeed, I guess, a form of self-healing when you listen to people.
So, and in general, this is called neuroplasticity. And the other examples I've heard is in your neck of the woods, London taxi drivers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Who, they have to learn the streets of London very, very well. They're tested, unlike some cities, where they just push their GPS. Most cities. So, and they've looked at these brains and discovered that they grew the part of the brain that deals with spatial, spatial knowledge. That they had a bigger part of that brain. Yeah. There's many other examples of that. Even musicians have grown different parts of their brain that other people don't have. So, and
they did some testing through with some animals and also humans, and just kind of getting an idea of what parts of the brain are moving and whatnot. And he has this phrase that he says, those that fire together wire together. So if you're firing off two responses at the same time, then that's going to kind of solidify in the brain.
Right.
So people talk about, I guess you could say, every time you hear a bell, and that has a positive effect, just like Pavlov's dogs, then that's where that connection of that response is coming through, and you're going to dedicate part of the brain to that. So what's so nice about this, indeed, I found that it really connects in with where we talk about using the dominant and non-dominant eye.
Right.
And if you think that another phrase there that he uses is whatever you don't use, then you lose. So either use it or lose it. So if you're not using, let's say, your left hand, then you're going to start getting a smaller, wherever that area of the brain is, you're going to start getting a smaller dedication of space, should we say. I think Richard always has great analogies of the computer, like some sort of a RAM or memory space.
Right.
So you're going to start having less space being dedicated to the left hand, and because you're using the right hand more and more, then the hard drive or the brain is going to start dedicating more and more memory and space to the right hand. So there's kind of this imbalance going on.
Yeah, they even discovered that like totally blind people, because they weren't using the visual cortex so much, but they were using touch to do braille, that they actually started employing the visual cortex for touch instead.
Wow.
So if you don't use it, your brain could be saying, we'll use that for something else, you know. So.
Yeah, and if you think again on that example, if you think about how we kind of say that blind people might have a sixth sense, or somebody, you know, that their hearing is so much more in tune than other people, or some sort of a sense. Yeah. And same with other, you know, I know with deaf people, they tune a lot more into their periphery, and they kind of use that as their sensing around them. So there's this change here in the brain where if you tune into something a little bit more, then your brain's going to dedicate a little bit more space to it, and you're going to be more efficient at doing that. So it makes more sense for the example of the dominant, non-dominant eye, how we talk about how you should obstruct the stronger eye, because if it's your stronger eye, then you're going to be using that more and more, so you're dominating with it throughout the day. So the brain is then dedicating more space to that, and you're overusing it, becomes your favored eye. So by balancing the two eyes, by obstructing that stronger eye, by doing other exercises like maybe the peripheral vision or the Melissa exercise, then you're helping bring balance to that, and it's also happening within the brain.
Yeah, and this goes back to our something we've said over and over, is that the vision is a lot in the brain, some in the eye and a lot in the brain. And so it makes sense that you then need to deal with, you know, how your brain is functioning in your vision. And that's, you're right, in like the Melissa, there's so many issues. It's like there's the center versus the periphery. Is the brain focused more on the center and ignoring the periphery? Is the brain just seeing two separate images and not fusing them together, and not using that brain power to fuse them together? There's so many things that can affect your vision that way. And
it's a nice reminder that we see with the brain, not the eyes.
Yeah.
And it takes quite a while for us to get our brains around it, excuse the pun. But the eye's job is to receive light, and then it gets transmitted into electricity, where it goes to the brain, and then that's where the seeing process comes in.
Right.
So the more we can exercise the brain in vision, then the better vision we're going to have. So say, for example, with the distance looking exercise for nearsightedness, and we talk about how part of it is that half the school of thought is that you're changing the shape of the eye, but then the other half is that you're exercising the brain, and you're getting the brain to adjust to see clearer further in the distance. So just going on and listening to this book, and we highly encourage everyone to try and listen to it and get a bit more of an idea, and you'll understand what we're talking about here. Obviously we can't fit a full review in a small podcast like this, but we wanted to bring our audience attention to it. But you can see then if the brain is adapting and improving and tuning in to whatever we're using it, and being specific with whatever we put our attention to, then you can see by doing the distance looking exercise and shifting in the distance, then that's going to train the brain in order to see clearer at that point in time.
And this is where we, you know, when we say, how are the exercises working? We were always dealing with astigmatism and distance looking, like you say. We're always stuck with like, well, is it the structure of the eye that's changing, or is it the brain that's changing? And it's really hard to tell when your vision is improving which part of that two-part formula is changing. But honestly, we don't care. You know?
As long as it works.
We don't. And I guess the neuroplasticity discoveries they've made at least lends us credence to like, okay, you could be doing these eye exercises and not changing your structure of your eye at all, but your brain is changing and seeing better just through your brain. So,
and I guess for myself, this this concept has really helped me because of my retinitis pigmentosa, where I kind of have that lack of peripheral field of vision. It was such a big concept to me, the idea of being able to tune my brain into my surroundings and into my periphery. And I've applied that so much to my exercises now, and so much of what I've been talking about here, just like with the yoga, of watching the ceiling and the pillars, and as I move up and down, noticing movements there. I probably might not have tuned into that as much if it hadn't have been for this book, because for me, the idea that if you tune into it, then you're really engaging the brain with the world around you. So even if it's a weaker aspect of your vision or anything in life, by applying that attention to it, trying to spend more time, then you're allowing more of those connections to the brain. You're getting more space there inside that hard drive, and it means that you're going to be more efficient in that area. And that really, again, lends towards why it's going to take time to do this, because you're growing new cells in the brain, your new neurons, and you're trying to make sense of it all. This is, you know, especially for myself, this is a new world, you know, tuning into this periphery and then learning how to function in it and trying to stop the brain from switching off, because it's not as good and as efficient as my central vision.
And I could explain in some ways why sometimes when vision improves, we're a little overwhelmed by it, because it is sort of a brain rewiring thing. You know, it's almost shaking to your sense of who you are, because your brain is rewiring.
And we really feel with this as well, especially when we work with our clients, is it kind of comes when the individual is ready. Both emotionally and physically, you know, everything is in place. And when you start seeing those flashes of clear vision, then there's kind of that indication that you're moving in the right direction and that you're kind of ready for it. So so plenty of implications there from that book. Again, Norman Doig, The Brain That Changes Itself. And it's highly enjoyable. There's a few more things in there about vision as well that everyone's going to enjoy. And you'll also see that it will apply to lots of other things in your life as well. I know for myself, he talked about how a guy was in prison for like 8 years in a what was it? It was like a prison camp. And he was in solitary confinement that whole time. And the only way he kept sane was that he learnt to visualize a chess game. A board, what's it?
Chessboard.
And he was able to play as both players.
Sides. My goodness.
And hold this in his brain. So this is how. So that to me, it was just, I was like, wow. It just, and I struggle with mental arithmetic. So it just goes to show the capacity and the ability that we have there in the brain. So it's a nice little reminder of our true capabilities if we put our minds to it, excuse the pun, or put our brains to it, and really exercise the brain as well as exercising the eyes. Okay, great. Well, I think that's a good time to move on to question of the week.
And the question of the week this week comes from a viewer who has noticed that when he looks at individual letters in a sign, he can read it clearly. But then when he tries to look at it as a whole word, it seems a little blurrier and he can't quite read it.
So I guess the original aspect of this question kind of goes back to Bates, really, where he talks about central fixation.
Right.
Do you want to explain a little bit?
So one of the major problems he saw in the way people use their eyes, he described it as people want to see everything clearly all at once, and everything should be clear all at once. And that's kind of the way we try, and if you're reading a sign, you go, I want to read that sign, and it should all be clear at once. And so you don't do a basic function of the eye, which is called shifting, which is moving your macula, the very small area of the retina that sees detail, from detail to detail. So when you're forcing your eye to see, I see that all clear, it's a strain, because you're not using the eye naturally. And that natural movement, shifting from detail to detail, is called central fixation, because you're focusing on that central point.
And you can look up, it's called saccadic movements, and that's that quick movements of the eye moving from place to place to place. And what it's doing is it's moving that clear part of your visual field, only about 1% of the retina, 3% of your whole vision. And that's kind of where our HD, our high definition viewing is. That's where we have double layers of cones where we pick up clearer and faster signals to go to the brain, so you actually see better. So what we want to do is we want to move that from place to place to place, and then the brain puts together it as a clear image.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you had a high resolution but very telephoto camera, you know, the telephoto lens, and you moved it around and then put it all together in your computer screen, and then you'd have one whole image that would be clear. And that's sort of what our brain and our memory does, is we move it around, get a lot of clear pieces, and then our brain kind of fools us into thinking we're seeing the whole thing clearly.
And this takes a bit of time, but without your glasses, it doesn't take too long to start to see this. You can maybe look at a landscape or a tree. Notice that what you're looking at is pretty clear. Some of the leaves have a bit more detail, but the leaves around it might be slightly grainier and not as crisp and clear as what you're looking at in your central vision.
Right.
And then move to a different leaf or a different part of the tree and notice that what you're looking at is then clear, and where you were looking at before then becomes slightly grainier and not as clear. And that's that central fixation moving from place to place to place.
Well, and to get back to his point was, when you don't do that, when you sort of stare at something and expect it all to be clear at once, you're straining your visual system, and you'll see worse. And that's what most of us do all the time. We don't do this moving around natural thing, because partly our environment coaxes us to stare at things like signs and information and computer screens and books.
Yeah, if you think about reading, it's just head forward, computer, head forward, writing, everything is just forward, forward, forward. And you notice when you start reading about saccadic movements and how the eyes are meant to be moving rapidly all over the place, and you think about, again, this kind of lends back to the ebook on our website, The Modern Day Guide for Improving Eyesight, where we talk about caveman Dave and how back in the day he would have been out in the wild and naturally moving his eyes in all these different places,
right.
In the distance and also near. And if you compare that to us, which in the book we call him Modern Day Mike, then you can imagine the difference of just staring forward for many hours during the day. And we try and take that principle out into the rest of the world around us. So if we're just staring, our vision is poorer because we don't have that natural movement, and we're not moving that detailed part of the eye from place to place to place. So we're kind of robbing ourselves of good vision there.
And this guy basically discovered, sort of through his own experience, what we would suggest to someone. So if they work too long, and well, actually we would probably suggest they palm or rest the eyes if they work too long. But if they start getting a little blurriness in what they're looking at, say at their work, we would say do a shifting exercise. You'd have our large and small print, where you'd look at the smaller letters, and that makes the bigger letters clearer. He was doing the same thing. He was shifting from staring to shifting. By looking at each individual letter. He was engaging the natural process of the eye, and he thereby saw better. And before, he was using the modern approach, and it wasn't working so well. So,
and I think that's a key point there as well, as a secondary part of this question, is that he was seeing it in a relaxed way. Right. It wasn't this stare. It sounded like this person has been working their way off their glasses, so there's that anxiety and frustration and all the rest of it in trying to see a sign, and the sign wasn't clear. So what we tend to do is we try to stare at it even more, right, and try and will it into clearness, and just hope that the more effort we put in, the clearer it gets. But ironically, it's the opposite. The more relaxed you are, the more you allow your eye to move naturally, just as what they did. They looked at the first, second, third, fourth, fifth letter. The eye progressively worked along in a nice, relaxed way. It enabled that central fixation to occur, that direct line of sight, so it meant that the image was going straight to the fovea, or the macula, the clear part at the back of the eye. So the images came in nice and clear, and they were able to see the sign.
Yeah, and one last point is when people talk about having a sparkle in your eye, this is what actually it is. It's you're moving, the person who has a sparkle in their eye are more relaxed and they're moving their eye in a natural way. And so that creates different reflections as the eye moves around. That's the sparkle in the eye. And they just have a more relaxed face because of all that. So it's another way of thinking about it. If your eye is moving around, you're not being neurotic, you actually have sparkle. So
that means that chat-up line that I heard of, is your dad a thief? And then they say no, and you say, well, he must be, because he stole the stars from the sky and put them in your eyes.
Oh, nice.
So that means that we can actually use that, and you could just follow that line up with, and then explain the saccadic movements.
There, yeah.
Central fixation.
You go into a bar and you approach a woman and you say, your saccadic movements are just stunning in your eyes.
I think it will work. So now we've got an explanation for that one.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a good line.
All right, great. Well, we hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. If you want to get a little bit more information on vision improvement, then head over to our website at envisionselfhealing.com. You'll find plenty of eye exercises over there for you to get working on, and even some eye exercise programs to help get you in the right direction on what exercises you should start doing for your condition. As we previously mentioned, you could also get your hands on a free ebook called A Modern Day Guide for Improving Eyesight. So just head over to the website and you'll see how you can get your hands on that as soon as possible. It's a direct download, so no problems there. You can also check us out on Twitter and indeed Facebook. Head over to Envision Self Healing, just type that into Facebook and it will send you straight over to us. And of course, if you enjoyed what Envision Self Healing and the information we have to offer, then feel free to like the fan page and indeed share it with anybody else that you feel that could benefit. And indeed the same, if you're watching this on YouTube or iTunes, feel free to share it with other people. And indeed you can also subscribe, and it means that you're going to get one of these podcasts sent to you every week. Okay, great. Well, good luck with your eye exercises, everybody, this week, and happy healing.
And have a good week.